Today we build a birdhouse camper with the slab technique. Welcome to Stecker Studios. Working from the sketch that you saw in our intro, I'm going to begin by starting off making a template. I'm looking to make my birdhouse about 6 by 4 inches big, so I'm going to measure this out before I begin drawing out my template so I know that I'm making it about the right size. Because on this design, the profile of the camper really kind of defines the shape and design of the entire birdhouse, I'm using this profile or side view of the camper to basically begin my design and plan everything out based around that. There are other approaches to begin this depending on the shape and the design that you're using. So now I'm cutting out the template, and I'm going to use this template to cut my first set of slabs. So I'll be able just to trace it in order to get the first shapes that I'm looking for. So now it's time to roll out my first slab. I'm grabbing a nice hunk of clay, and I have a set of dowels that are about 3/8 of an inch wide to make sure that I roll this out nice and even. And using my rolling pin, I'm rolling my clay on top of a piece of canvas to keep it from sticking to the table. Periodically, it's a good idea to turn and rotate your slab so that it can be spread out and not kind of roll back in on itself when it begins to dry, as clay has memory. I'm going to make sure that I roll this out large enough for my template, trace the template with a sharp tool, and now I'm going to begin cutting out my first shape. Make sure that you cut carefully so that you don't distort your slab. You keep it nice and flat and even. And I'm going to save all my scraps and wedge them to reuse that clay as I go. Now I'm going to roll out this slab in almost the same exact way, except now that I have one side cut, I'm actually going to use the first slab that I cut in order to trace rather than going back and using my template. This way it matches the same shape that I've cut previously. Again, I'm going to save those scraps and wedge the clay again so that way I can keep reusing the same clay. And I'm going to begin rolling out some other slabs to make up the floor of the camper, the walls on the sides, and also the roof. Try to roll out those slabs as big as you can, but make sure you keep them even. This way you don't have to go back as many times and roll as many slabs if you can get multiple parts out of a single piece of clay. So I'm measuring for the width of my camper. I want the camper to be about 4 inches wide, and I'm also measuring to try to make this slab piece long enough to make up the floor of the camper and hopefully have a little left over to make up one of the walls as well. So here I am again measuring just to make sure I get the right length for the floor. I'm going to mark it and make sure that I cut the slab nice and straight. So here's a quick little test fit just to make sure that all the parts are cut to the right size and that everything so far will fit together. Now I'm just going to kind of test fit this piece as well to see how much space do I need to make up the side walls or the front and back walls of this camper. From time to time, it's helpful to clean up your slabs as you go to keep them nice and even, and to allow them to dry evenly to leather hard before we start to build. We're just going to stack these on top of one another, spacing them with a little bit of newspaper to help them to dry, and stacking them will help them to also dry flat. So I'm going to continue on rolling more of these slabs and cutting them to size in order to get all of the pieces that I need. This next slab is our second to last slab and will make up the roof of our camper. So I need to make sure that I measure it to be long enough to fit. And this is our last slab for our camper, so this one's going to end up being another wall. And now with all of our pieces cut out, we're going to just test fit one more time and trim our pieces to size before we store them away to stiffen up a little bit so that we can later assemble them. As you can see right now, our slabs are still a little bit floppy, so if I were to try to assemble this, it would probably fall over or become lopsided and definitely lose its shape. So we want to let these slabs stiffen up a little bit before we start to attach everything. So now that I'm test fitting everything, I can see that this roof panel is just a little bit too big, so I can trim it off, and I'm going to cut it at an angle so that it attaches well when I go to reassemble it later. Now that I'm done cutting all my pieces and test fitting, I'm going to wrap all of these pieces in newspaper so they can stiffen up so we can assemble them next. As I'm going, I'm kind of tapping and trying to flatten out each piece, and I'm stacking them up to help encourage them to dry nice and flat. In the next video, we're going to open these up again and begin assembling our parts.